Welcome to Shadowed Tales Archive, a place where forgotten stories breathe again, where whispers crawl from the cracks of reality, and fear finds a voice. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely, because some tales were never meant to be told. Tonight's story is titled Echoes of the Livestream. Let the shadows speak.
Part 1. The user named oblivion.exe. When the live stream began, there was no sound, just static, soft, irregular hissing like a distant storm gathering in some unseen part of the world. The screen was nearly black, but you could faintly make out a pale, hunched figure sitting at the edge of a bed. He didn't move, not for the first few minutes. Then he blinked. Somewhere in Kansas, a 13-year-old boy named Jeremy Decker sat on the floor of his bedroom, hoodie half-zipped, laptop on his knees, the glow painting ghost light across his cheekbones. His parents thought he was asleep. His friends thought he was weird. And the internet? The internet thought he was exactly the kind of person who'd be watching oblivion.exe. That was the account name. No profile pic. No description. Just a string of bizarre live streams that had been posted to a site called the Gasping Feed. The site didn't show up on normal searches. It had to be accessed via direct link, usually passed around by kids on forums that no one moderated and everyone denied using. Jeremy had found it by accident. Or maybe it found him. He stared at the figure on the stream. The man's head was down, hair stringy, unwashed. He wore an oversized white t-shirt, stained at the collar, and his hands trembled faintly on his lap. Still no sound. Then the camera zoomed on its own. Jeremy didn't touch anything, but the view began to slowly close in on the man's face. The pixels sharpened. The static faded. And that's when the whispering started. It wasn't coming from the video. It was coming from behind Jeremy. He spun around. Nothing. No one. Just his closed bedroom door, the old shelf full of worn manga, and the string of LED lights flickering gently on the ceiling. He turned back to the screen. The man was looking at the camera now. Not just looking, staring. And though his lips moved slowly, soundlessly, Jeremy somehow understood what he was saying. You wanted the ending, didn't you? If Jeremy had been any other kind of boy, if he had friends, if he played sports, if he didn't spend every night doom scrolling on image boards full of anonymous sadness, he might have closed the laptop right then. But he didn't. He leaned in closer. His breath fogged the screen. The man on the feed held something up, a Polaroid photo. It was blurry and cracked, but Jeremy could make out the figure in the image. It was him. Same hoodie, same room, same laptop. Then the screen cut to black, and Jeremy felt something wet drip onto his sock. He looked down. It was a drop of blood from his own nose. Part 2. The black thread. The blood wasn't heavy, just a trickle, just enough to paint the curve of his upper lip, coppery and sharp in the air-conditioned room. Jeremy sniffed hard and wiped it with the back of his hoodie sleeve. He stared at the now black screen. The stream had ended. No chat box. No replay. No sign it had ever existed. He reloaded the page. Nothing. 404 error. Content not found. It was like the whole thing had evaporated. He unplugged the laptop, closed it, and just sat there, the blood drying against his skin. The whispering was gone now. He told himself it had been his imagination, probably sleep deprivation. He'd been running on 5 hours of sleep stretched across 3 nights. It did things to your mind, or so the school counselor kept saying. Still, he didn't sleep that night. When the morning sun filtered through his blinds, Jeremy's face looked paler than usual. He hadn't taken a shower, hadn't eaten. He just dressed and left, ignoring his mom's half-hearted call from the kitchen about grab a protein bar or something. School was a blur. People passed him in the halls like ghosts. Teachers talked, but their voices felt distant underwater. He heard syllables, not words. Nothing stayed with him except the image, that Polaroid, his face, in his room. During lunch, he found himself sitting outside behind the dumpsters. The cold concrete seeped through his jeans. His hoodie clung to his frame like a security blanket. A group of sophomore boys laughed somewhere to the right, but Jeremy wasn't paying attention. He was staring at a thread. It was stuck to the cuff of his hoodie. Black, fine, like the kind used in doll making or embroidery. He tried brushing it off, but it wouldn't budge. He pulled it gently, thinking it was just tangled. It didn't come off. He yanked harder, and the thread moved, not away from him, into him, like it was sinking into his skin. He gasped and pulled his sleeve back, heart pounding, expecting to see blood or a wound or something else wrong. But the skin was clean. No hole. No trace of thread. Just a faint circular bruise. No bigger than a bottle cap. That night, Jeremy didn't go to the gasping feed. He didn't want to. Instead, he opened YouTube like he used to before everything got strange. He tried watching old gaming videos. The kind where people screamed dramatically and threw controllers for laughs. He smiled at the screen, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something inside him had changed, shifted, like the stream had pulled something out, or worse, put something in. When he finally fell asleep near dawn, the dreams were vivid. The man from the stream stood in the middle of an endless field of static, arms open. Dozens of TV sets hovered around him in the air, each one playing a suicide on loop. Hanging, drowning, gunshot to the mouth, all in perfect HD. The whisper came again. They always want to know, until they do. He woke up screaming. Jeremy's mom barged in, flipping the light switch. Jeremy? Jesus, what happened? He blinked, sat up. His skin was covered in sweat, his sheets tangled. He looked around, wild-eyed, like someone who had just climbed out of a grave. I don't know, he muttered. She softened. You've been staying up too late again. I told you to stop with those creepy sights. Look at you. I didn't. I don't want to argue. You're seeing Dr. Feldman tomorrow. No excuses. Jeremy nodded slowly. Dr. Feldman, the school psychiatrist, a tall man with heavy-lidded eyes and a monotone voice. He once told Jeremy, "You're not alone," in a way that made it sound like a warning instead of comfort. The next day, Jeremy sat in Feldman's office, staring at a fake plant in the corner while the doctor clicked his pen slowly. "You said you saw something that disturbed you." Jeremy hesitated. If he said he watched a man live stream his death and then show him a photo of himself, he'd be hospitalized. Easy. So instead he said, "Just a video." It wasn't real, but it felt real. Dr. Feldman leaned forward. Sometimes our brains can't tell the difference, especially when we're tired or isolated. Jeremy didn't speak. The doctor wrote something down and said, "Do you ever feel like something is watching you, Jeremy?" The question caught him off guard. He looked up. "Why would you say that?" The man stared back without blinking. "You looked at the corner of the room 3 times in the last 2 minutes, as if something was there." Jeremy felt cold. He hadn't realized he was doing that. When he got home, the thread was back. Same black filament. This time it was looped through his left pant leg. Again it wouldn't come loose. And again, when he yanked, it vanished into his skin like it had never existed. But the bruise was back too. Bigger now. Purple. Ring shape. Almost like a thumbprint. That night, curiosity overpowered fear. He went back to the gasping feed. The homepage had changed. It used to be a list of categorized videos. Now it was just a black screen with red text blinking at the center. You watched. You chose. It watches. No links. No exit button. Just those words. Jeremy tried closing the browser. It wouldn't shut. He pulled the plug on the laptop, waited 10 seconds, plugged it back in. The same screen returned immediately. You are not logged out. Jeremy slammed the laptop shut and threw it onto the bed. His hands were shaking. He went to the mirror above his dresser just to ground himself. He told himself it was just a bad dream, a spiral of guilt, stress, sleep deprivation, whatever. But when he looked in the mirror, the reflection didn't blink. Part 3. Dead channels. Jeremy didn't move. He stood frozen in front of the mirror, watching as the reflection stared back, still, hollow, unblinking. His real eyes burned with tears. His heartbeat raced. He blinked. The reflection didn't. He blinked again. Still no response. And then it smiled. A slow, unnatural twitch of the lips. Not joyful. Not amused. Mechanical. Like a puppet tugged by invisible strings. Jeremy staggered backward, knocking over a lamp. The bulb shattered on the hardwood floor, releasing a tiny flash before the room fell into half-darkness. He gasped and spun to face the mirror again, but now the reflection was normal, matching his expression perfectly, blinking fast and terrified. He stared at himself for a long time, waiting for something to change again. Nothing did. The smile was gone, but he could still feel it. That night, Jeremy didn't sleep in his room. He camped out on the living room couch, keeping the TV on low volume, set to some late-night infomercial selling tactical flashlights and survival gear. He clutched the remote like a weapon. The black thread didn't come back. Not that night. The next morning, Jeremy felt like he was running out of time. Whatever this was, it was spreading. It had started with a live stream, sure. But now it was bleeding into mirrors, into the bruises on his skin, into the corners of rooms he didn't remember looking at but somehow always noticed. He needed to talk to someone. Not a teacher. Not a shrink. Someone who knew. He opened his laptop. This time it didn't show the gasping feed. Instead, his screen loaded into a forum he hadn't visited in months, voidwatchers.net. It was an old haunt of his, back when he'd gone through a paranormal obsession phase. The site was ugly, clunky, full of dead threads and insane ramblings. But it also had a survivor stories section, supposed first-person accounts from people who'd encountered what they called void-linked entities. Digital hauntings. Files that infected your mind. Images that stared back. It had sounded like bad sci-fi then. Now it felt like documentation. He searched the forum for oblivion.exe. Nothing. He tried gasping feed. Nothing again. Finally he typed, "Mirror doesn't blink. Black thread under skin. Reflection smiles first." He clicked post and waited. 5 minutes. 10. Just as he was about to close the tab, a response appeared. User VeilSync32. You've already been seen. You're marked. Do not acknowledge your reflection again. Not even to check it. Another message appeared seconds later. Where was your first exposure? Don't lie. Jeremy's hands trembled as he typed. Livestream. No audio. Man staring. Showed a photo of me. Nosebleed after. The reply came fast. Do you still dream of static? Jeremy froze. How could this user know? Yes. Then the final message. You're in phase 2. If you want to survive, you need to find the source of the broadcast. The house in the background, it wasn't just a set. It's real. And you're getting closer to it. The message window blinked, and then disappeared. The next few days passed like a fever dream. The black thread returned, now in multiple places. One coiled gently along his forearm like a vein made of ink. Another circled his neck like a noose that hadn't tightened yet. Each time he touched one, it vanished into him, feeding something he couldn't name. The bruises were no longer bruises. They had become marks, perfect circles with jagged edges, like fingerprints burned in by something too large to touch. His reflection no longer smiled. It simply waited, and behind his eyelids, static pulsed like a heartbeat. It was on Thursday night that Jeremy received the package. There was no return address, just a small cardboard box on the front porch, rain-soaked and humming faintly. Yes, humming. He carried it inside, hands shaking. His mom was out for a late shift. He was alone. Inside the box, a VHS tape, black, unlabeled, and beneath it, a map. It was hand-drawn, sloppy, scribbled in thick red marker. But Jeremy recognized the name scrawled in bold letters at the bottom. Hanley Grove, Lot 22. That was only a 30-minute drive out of town. And on the map, right beside the crude sketch of the house, someone had drawn a stick figure standing in front of a glowing screen. In its hand, it held a Polaroid. Jeremy didn't own a VCR. No one his age did. But his neighbor Mr. Felton did. He was one of those elderly loners who still watched black and white war films and grilled meat in the rain. Jeremy knocked on his door, clutching the vase like a live grenade. Felton answered, bathrobe on, cigarette dangling from his lip. "What is it, kid?" Jeremy cleared his throat. My school project's on vintage media. You mind if I borrow your VCR for like 10 minutes? Felton grunted. "Fine. But you break it, I'll break your spine." Fair trade. The tape started with snow. Jeremy sat alone in the living room, knees tucked to his chest, watching as the screen crackled to life. The hum from the box was back, faint like an insect crawling just behind the speaker. Then the image appeared. A familiar room. The same one from the live stream. Only now it was empty. No man. No bed. Just a desk. And on the desk, a stack of photographs. One by one, they began to rise on their own, fluttering like leaves in a silent wind, arranging themselves into a perfect spiral. Then the camera zoomed in. Each photo showed someone different. A woman crying into her sink. A man standing on a rooftop, arms out. A child holding a noose like it was a toy. The last photo? Jeremy. Not from the previous stream. From today. In Felton's living room. Sitting in front of a VHS player. Watching himself. The tape ejected violently. Smoke hissed out of the VCR. Felton's voice boomed from the kitchen. "What the hell did you do?" Jeremy didn't answer. He was too busy staring at the screen, now covered in static, where his face still lingered for a moment longer than it should have. Part 4. Lot 22. The GPS didn't list a Lot 22. Hanley Grove wasn't even a real town, not anymore. It was a failed housing development from the early 2000s. A few miles of cracked pavement, unfinished sidewalks, and rotting wooden frames. No power. No residents. Jeremy only found it because of the map. Red lines drawn over Google Maps printed screenshots. A dirt road barely wider than a single lane curved past a dried-out lake and a weather-beaten sign that read, "Hanley Grove, a vision of tomorrow." The sign had been graffitied with one word, aborted. He parked his mom's car a few yards past the sign and walked the rest of the way. The silence was unnatural. No wind, no birds, no distant highways. Just the crunch of dead leaves beneath his shoes and the dull ringing in his ears, like his body already knew it shouldn't be here. Lot 22 stood at the end of a cul-de-sac. The house was intact, mostly. A two-story shell of wood and drywall, its windows like black eyes sunken in a pale skull. The front door was open. Not swinging, not cracked, open as if expecting him. Jeremy swallowed hard and stepped inside. The interior smelled of mildew and something older. Not rot, not mold. Memory, like old film stock, like burnt photographs. The floor creaked underfoot as he made his way through the narrow hall. To the left, a collapsed kitchen. To the right, a stairwell leading up into shadow. Straight ahead, the room. The room. He recognized it instantly. The low ceiling, the scratched floorboards, the faded ring of sun discoloration near the wall where a bed once was, and against the opposite wall, a desk, empty except for one object, Polaroid camera, yellowed with age, but it hummed faintly, alive. Jeremy reached for it. As soon as his fingers brushed the edge, it snapped. Click. The photo ejected instantly. His heart thudded as he took it, hands trembling. It was him, right now, standing in the room. Only behind him, where nothing had been, was a figure. Blurry, shadowed. Just a suggestion of a shape. No face, no features, just a smile. He spun around. Nothing. The room was empty, but the temperature had dropped. He could see his breath now. He looked back at the photo. The shadow was still there. It hadn't faded. It hadn't warped. It hadn't changed. Then from upstairs something creaked. Not the building shifting. Not the wind. A footstep. Jeremy backed into the wall, gripping the camera like it could protect him. Another footstep. Then another. Slow. Measured. Whatever it wasn't rushing. It had time. He turned and bolted down the hallway, but the moment he stepped out of the room, the house changed. The light shifted. The hallway seemed longer. Endless. He ran, breath ragged, pulse pounding in his throat, but every door led back to the room. He opened the bathroom, the room. Opened a closet, the room. Opened a cabinet under the sink, the room. It was looping, like a bad file on repeat, like a live stream. Jeremy collapsed in the middle of the floor, chest heaving. The camera on the desk clicked again. Another photo slid out. He didn't touch it, didn't look, but he heard it flutter to the floor like a dead moth. And then the voice, not loud, not from the air around him, from inside his own mind. You watched them leave. You watched them end. Now you get to choose your final view. The air grew heavier, pressing down on his chest like invisible hands. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, could only look. The third photo slid out. It landed face up. Jeremy's face, lips blue, eyes open, blood running from his ears. Date stamped, tomorrow. Suddenly, a flash of movement. Outside the window, Jeremy turned his head just enough to see a girl, not more than 16, standing outside in the tall grass, watching him, alive, real. She gestured toward the door, then ran. Without thinking, Jeremy pushed through the weight on his body and forced himself up, stumbling after her. The air pulled at him like taffy, but he made it. Out the hall, through the door, back into the open air. The grass crunched under his sneakers. The girl was already 30 feet ahead, darting between decayed beams and rusted construction signs. He followed, lungs aching, vision doubling. Finally, she stopped beneath a bent street lamp. He caught up, panting. Why are you here?" he gasped. She looked at him, eyes dark and tired. "I saw the live stream too." Her voice was hollow, like someone who had spent years screaming and finally ran out of noise. "My name's Sky. You've got maybe 2 days left. If we don't stop it." "Stop what?" She pointed to the bruise on his neck, the one shaped like a ring. "That's not a mark. It's a seal. You let it in. Now it wants a broadcast." Part 5. Broadcast Protocol. The wind picked up once they left Lot 22. It wasn't natural wind. It didn't sway the trees or ripple the grass. It howled inside Jeremy's ears like radio static turned up to full volume, sharp and synthetic. Like the world was trying to send him a message in a language it wasn't meant to speak. Sky didn't flinch. She just kept walking. Jeremy stumbled behind her, one hand pressed to the ring-shaped bruise on his neck. It throbbed now, like a second heartbeat. They climbed over a rusted fence behind the cul-de-sac and followed an old gravel trail into the woods. Sky moved like someone who had walked these paths before, like she'd memorized every bend. Jeremy finally spoke. "What is this place?" She didn't turn. "Where the antenna used to be." Antenna? For the original signal. Back when the entity needed physical hardware to broadcast, before it learned how to use us. Jeremy swallowed. "Use us?" Now she stopped, turned, pointed at his chest. "You've already uploaded one stream. You just don't remember it." They reached the clearing. It was overgrown, ringed with dead trees, but at the center stood a rusted metal tower, about 30 feet tall. A spire of corroded bolts, sagging wires, and burnt-out bulbs. Half the structure had collapsed inward like a broken ribcage. Jeremy stared at it. It radiated wrongness. Back in 2004, Sky said, they built this to test something called passive relay transmission. A way to push audiovisual content straight into viewers' subconscious while they slept. Jeremy's stomach twisted. "You mean, like dreams?" She nodded. "Nightmares mostly. They thought it would be useful for warfare. Send fear directly into the enemy. And it worked." Sky looked at him. "No, it worked too well. The first test subjects stopped dreaming, then stopped sleeping, then started seeing each other's thoughts in real time, like shared hallucinations. Then, they began filming themselves." Jeremy blinked. "Wait, filming what?" "Their ends," she said softly. "The same way you saw that man. The same way you watched the girl on the VHS." Jeremy felt his legs go weak. "So this thing, the entity, it was created by the transmission?" "No," she whispered. "It was waiting. We just gave it a better signal." The tower clicked. A dry, mechanical stutter, like an old VHS being ejected. Jeremy stepped back instinctively. "Is it alive?" "It's listening," Sky said. "It always listens when someone marked gets close. It's how it learns your face, your fears, your final scene." Jeremy clutched the camera still hanging around his neck from Lot 22. "So what do we do?" Sky crouched and dug into the dirt beside the tower. After a minute, she unearthed a cracked metal case. Inside, a stack of yellowed documents, tangled wires, a burned-out walkie, and at the very bottom, a blood-stained flash drive. She held it up like it was a crucifix. "This is the original signal. The first stream. The one that broke the line between watcher and watched. If we can upload it back to the tower, overload it, it might burn the broadcast pattern." Jeremy frowned. "You mean, kill it?" "No, but it won't be able to feed. Not for a while." He looked at her. "And us." She hesitated. "If we do this, we're off the feed. No more reflections. No more threads. But it will try to stop us." Jeremy's fingers tightened around the camera. "Then let's do it fast." They returned to Lot 22 as night fell. The house was darker now, not just in shadow, but in presence. Jeremy could feel it vibrating under his skin, like an engine turning beneath the floorboards. Sky moved ahead, fearless. Or maybe she'd just been scared so long that it didn't register anymore. They entered the back room. The one from the stream. The one from the photo. This time the desk had changed. No longer empty. Now it held a vintage broadcast console. Dials, knobs, ports. It hadn't been there before, but it had always been waiting. Sky inserted the flash drive. The screen lit up, just static at first, then faces, dozens of them. Men, women, children, all blinking in and out, distorted like corrupted files, each one mid-sentence, mid-movement, mid-death. Jeremy turned away, while rising in his throat. "This is what it feeds on," he said. Sky nodded grimly. "Endings. It collects them, like bookmarks in a corrupted library." Then something on the screen changed. One of the faces stabilized. Clear. Crisp. Jeremy's own. Only older. Eyes sunken. Blood crusted beneath his nose. Lips whispering something over and over. He leaned in, tried to hear. And then it locked eyes with him. "You're late." The room shook. The lights flickered. A low hum began beneath their feet, like the tower was waking up. "Upload starting," Sky said. "We've got 60 seconds before the system tries to overwrite it." Jeremy backed toward the window, but his reflection stared from the glass, still smiling, still not blinking. Suddenly, the bruise on his neck burned, like a brand pressed to flesh. He screamed, and the reflection screamed back, but with no sound. Sky lunged forward, holding him steady. "It's trying to crash your mind. Don't look at yourself. Not directly." He clenched his eyes shut. 30 seconds, she yelled. The static on the monitor turned red. The reflections in every surface of the room, metal, glass, even Sky's pupils, started moving independently, not matching reality. The entity was coming. One last defense. A broadcast firewall made of memories and mimicry. Then at 20 seconds, the floor split. A single black thread shot from the crack and wrapped around Jeremy's ankle. Then another around his wrist. He was being pulled toward the screen. Sky grabbed the camera from his chest, ripped the back open, and jammed the internal film into the console port. The machine sparked, then screamed. A high-pitched feedback shriek. The images on the monitor warped and shattered like broken teeth. The thread snapped. Jeremy hit the ground. The burn vanished. The bruise faded to gray. The console smoked. The screen shut off. Silence. Jeremy lay there, panting as Sky dropped beside him. "It worked," she whispered. And then, for the first time in days, Jeremy started to cry. Part 6. Signal Loss. For a few precious hours there was silence. No whispers, no static, no bruises darkening like spilled ink. Just the moonlight filtering through the half-broken windows of Lot 22 and the exhausted breathing of two teenagers who had, at least for now, survived something neither of them could name. Jeremy sat on the floor, back against the wall, feeling the weight in his limbs for the first time in days. His hoodie was soaked through with sweat and dust. The pain in his neck had dulled to a faint sting. The mark was still there, but it had faded, like an unplugged scar. Across from him, Sky had curled up into a sitting position with her knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tight around herself. Neither of them spoke for a long while. Finally, Jeremy broke the silence. "Is it over?" Sky looked up. Her eyes were tired, but not relieved. "No." They walked back to the car just after dawn. The air felt wrong. Not heavy, not evil, just off. As if reality hadn't fully reloaded itself after being corrupted. Like a dream that was pretending to be morning. Jeremy's phone had reset. All of his photos gone. No texts, no call history, no apps. Just one new message. "You disconnected. We buffered." He showed Sky. She didn't seem surprised. That's its way of saying noted. The entity doesn't die. It adapts. It's a living archive. She opened her own phone. Same message. "You disconnected. We buffered." New host pending. They didn't go home. They couldn't. Something told them that returning to normal life, school, family, homework, wasn't an option anymore. You couldn't burn down a part of reality and expect the rest to act like nothing had happened. Instead, they drove to a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that always smelled like burnt coffee and stale pie crust. A waitress with heavy eyeliner and zero patience took their order and left them alone. Sky sipped a soda, then finally said what Jeremy had been dreading. "Someone else is next." Jeremy stared at her. "We stopped the upload." "We stopped one upload," she corrected. "But the signal's already replicated. Every person who saw that original live stream, every one of them is now a potential broadcast. It's a chain reaction." Jeremy felt the world tilt sideways. "So we didn't fix it. We just delayed it." She nodded. "We broke the mirror, but the shards are still out there." Back at the tower before they fled, Sky had salvaged the console's storage drive. It wasn't just a machine, it was a server. One that had been logging every broadcast, every upload, every marked viewer. And within the corrupted data files was a list of usernames. Hundreds of them. People who had seen the stream and survived. Some marked, some not, some pending. Sky had printed the list at an old university library using a burner account. She laid it on the table now between the scrambled eggs and lukewarm coffee. Jeremy read the top 5 names. He recognized one. Jonah Decker, his older brother. Disappeared 3 years ago. His mouth went dry. "No, that's not, he ran away." Sky looked at him gently. "Maybe. Or maybe he was broadcast." Jeremy clutched the table to keep himself from shaking. Later that afternoon, they found an abandoned internet cafe on the south end of the city. Most of the computers had been stripped, but the server room was intact. Sky wired the drive into an old terminal and started decrypting the files. Jeremy paced behind her, watching the code flood the screen. Audio files, metadata, video thumbnails with red blurs, taglines like, "She didn't know she was still live," looped until collapse. Even the mirror couldn't look away. Then one folder blinked. Upcoming broadcasts. Sky hesitated. Jeremy clicked. Inside were timestamps, locations, names, and a countdown clock for each. Isaac Wren, 13 hours, 24 minutes and 19 seconds remaining. Sherry Vale, 26 hours, 2 minutes and 45 seconds remaining. Caitlin Monroe, 37 hours, 18 minutes and 5 seconds remaining. Jeremy Decker, 47 hours, 59 minutes and 50 seconds remaining. His name was still there. Sky stepped back. "They were just waiting for the signal to recover," she said. "You're still in the loop. So am I." Jeremy stared at the screen. "We have less than 2 days." He remembered what the reflection said in the tape. "You're late." He thought it had been a taunt. Now he realized it was a schedule. The entity didn't feed randomly. It programmed its viewers, turned them into content, curated, scheduled, packaged, and now Jeremy was headlining. They spent that night building a firewall, not digital, metal. Sky showed him how to resist the entity's influence, how to avoid reflective surfaces, how to override thought patterns with white noise, how to mute memory spikes that tried to trigger images. It felt like meditation crossed with self-hypnosis. They destroyed their phones, burned their clothes, deleted every backup photo, every file, every copy of their own faces. "The entity can't broadcast what it can't see," she explained. "But what about the camera?" She held up the old Polaroid from Lot 22. "I think it's part of the loop but broken, like a virus that mutated. It might be the only way we can turn the broadcast against itself." Jeremy stared at it, then nodded. At midnight, a new notification pinged the terminal. Emergency backup stream initiated. Viewer threshold 1000 reached. Next live host, Sky Renshaw. Time remaining 6 hours. Sky looked at him. Jeremy didn't hesitate. We're ending this. Part 7. Reverse broadcast. 5 hours and 59 minutes. That's how long Sky had left. The countdown blinked at the bottom corner of the terminal screen. The timestamp was live, ticking relentlessly toward her scheduled disappearance. Jeremy stared at it like a gun slowly cocking itself in reverse. Silent, mechanical, inevitable. Sky pulled a folded notebook from her backpack. It was full of diagrams, network trees, signal bleed models, names crossed out in red. Jeremy spotted photos of a server bank deep underground, an old route map to an off-grid ISP node, and on the last page a plan. Reverse broadcast, final attempt. Objective, hijack the feed. Replace stream content with looped live consciousness. Risk full mental bleed. Possession. Broadcast collapse. Unknown fail conditions. Jeremy looked up at her. You've tried this before? She shook her head. Only mapped it. No one's lived long enough to actually pull it off. Jeremy's stomach churned. Then why would it work now? Sky gave him a tired smile. Because we're already dead content walking. This is just about editing the ending. They returned to Lot 22, not because they wanted to, but because it was the last known node where the broadcast had accepted uploads manually. If they wanted to push something back into the feed, it had to be through the original source. The house greeted them like it had been waiting. No creaks, no cold, no wind, just stillness. Jeremy dragged in a backpack full of old camera parts, a cracked laptop, and a mini generator stolen from a roadside construction site. Sky carried the Polaroid, the console's burned flash drive, and a device she called the splitter, a Frankenstein-looking piece of hardware that could hijack both analog and digital signals. She hooked everything up at the desk. Lights flickered. The room pulsed. Time remaining, 4 hours 21 minutes and 38 seconds. We'll need 8 minutes of sustained stream time, she said, her voice flat. No interruptions. If we can loop my conscious presence long enough, the entity's archive will accept it as a completed file and delete the pending queue. Jeremy rubbed his face. You're saying we overwrite you? She nodded. I become the glitch. As the setup booted, Jeremy noticed something strange. The walls, they were changing. Not visibly, but perceptibly. Like the air had texture now, grainy like old film stock. A chair that had always been empty now held an impression, like someone had just gotten up. Light pooled in places where there were no windows. Jeremy blinked and saw frames. Dozens of them faintly superimposed in the air, all showing the same room, but different versions. One held an image of a crying man with a gun. Another, an empty crib. A third, Sky hanging from the ceiling by black threads. He looked away dizzy. The house is compiling, she said quietly. It knows we're trying to broadcast. It's preparing counter content. Time remaining, 3 hours 12 minutes and 20 seconds. Sky sat in front of the camera. Jeremy flipped the splitter. The signal connected. The air buzzed. Lights dimmed. The room's edges blurred like they were underwater. Her face appeared on the laptop screen. Then another screen. Then 5. Then all of them. And on each, she stared forward, blinking in perfect sync, breathing softly. Jeremy checked the loop delay. Exactly 0.7 seconds. We're live, he said. The entity responded. The mirror cracked, not from outside pressure but from within, as if something behind the glass wanted out and had begun to push. A sharp, high-pitched tone filled the room, and Jeremy's nose began to bleed. Sky winced. Here it comes. Then the bruises came back, fast, all at once. Her arms, her neck, her chest, rings forming like burns, like black handprints. The countdown blinked again. Time remaining, 1 hour 55 minutes and 17 seconds. Loop signal, unstable. Viewer resistance detected. Jeremy looked at the error logs flooding the laptop. Sky, it's pushing back. You're not enough. The entity's rejecting the override. She clenched her teeth. It needs more. More presence. More reflection. He stared at her, then grabbed the Polaroid. What are you doing? She yelled. Giving it what it wants. He turned the camera on himself. Click. Flash. Photo slid out. Jeremy's face distorted. Stretched. Already beginning to blur. He jammed the photo into the input slot on the splitter. The screen split in two. Now he was on half the feeds. The feedback dropped. The loop stabilized. Loop signal restored. Time remaining, 1 hour 22 minutes and 10 seconds. The floor buckled. A shadow emerged in the corner, tall, wrong, shaking. Not like a person, but like bad data trying to approximate one. It moved toward them in jolting frames. Jeremy held his ground. The laptop showed more faces now. Dozens, then hundreds, all watching, all part of the loop. He could hear their voices inside his skull, crying, laughing, screaming. But behind it all, a single word repeated. Broadcast, broadcast, broadcast. Time remaining, 10 minutes and 3 seconds. Viewer load, 1003. Entity cache, unstable. Final loop detected. Sky looked up. I think it's working. Jeremy felt pressure in his chest, like his lungs were being recorded. The room shuddered again. The shadow stepped into the camera's view. It hissed, and then, time remaining, 1 second. Loop complete. Pending broadcast queue, deleted. Cache purge confirmed. Signal collapsed. The lights blew out. The laptop shut down. The feed died. And the house, finally, was quiet. They didn't speak for a long time. Sky stood up slowly, wiping blood from her lip. Jeremy was pale, unsteady. His fingers shook, but he smiled. You still here? She nodded. You? He checked his neck. The bruise was gone. So was the threat. And for the first time in days, his reflection blinked with him. Part 8. Last viewer left. The air felt different. No more static under the skin. No more threads hidden in sleeves. The walls of Lot 22 no longer shimmered like film grain. The room just looked old. Drywall flaking. Dust swirling in pale morning light. Dead. Jeremy and Sky sat on the floor, backs to the same wall, knees drawn up. No tears. No cheering. No celebration. They had pulled something impossible off, but it hadn't felt like victory. It felt like deferral. Like erasing a virus from a drive, knowing the drive itself is cracked. I haven't heard the voice, Jeremy said after a long time. Sky nodded slowly. Me either. You think it's really gone? She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled the flash drive from her coat pocket, the one they'd used for the broadcast override. It was cracked down the center. A single red light blinked slowly from within. Jeremy narrowed his eyes. That wasn't blinking before. Sky nodded, which means it's still running something. They looked at each other. Then she said what neither of them wanted to hear. Something else is watching now. They drove south for 3 days. No phones. No internet. No names. Just fuel receipts and roadside motels and a second-hand camcorder they used to check each other's reflections in windows before entering any room. They thought distance might keep them safe. It didn't. The red blinking started showing up in other things. In the light on a hotel smoke detector. In the LED on a drive-through credit card reader. Once, in the pupils of a dog that growled as they passed it on the highway. Something hadn't been erased, just copied. Sky opened the laptop again on day 4. They were in a rented storage unit with no power. The laptop battery was at 12%. When she opened the terminal, the console interface from Lot 22 reappeared. Not a saved file. Not cached. What? But instead of countdowns, it showed only one field. Viewer remaining, 1. Jeremy stared at it. Just 1. She nodded. The rest are gone. Either overwritten or waiting. He felt the hairs on his arms rise. So, we're being watched again? Sky didn't blink. No, you are. Jeremy looked into the cracked side mirror of the truck they'd stolen. His reflection blinked, but something was off. Its mouth moved, his didn't. Then, slowly, the reflection smiled. Not malevolent, not mocking, just sat, like it knew something he didn't. Sky watched quietly. How long do you think you were marked before I found you? Jeremy didn't answer. They decided to test the drive. If it was still broadcasting or storing, then someone had to be listening. Some signal had to be echoing back. So they created a dummy file, a looped video of static and a blank slate figure. Faceless, nameless, no identity markers. They uploaded it into the drive manually using an old analog conversion trick Sky had found in an abandoned subreddit. At first, the system rejected it. Then it paused, then accepted. A second later, a new line appeared. View count, 1. Jeremy froze. I didn't open it. Sky shook her head. Me neither. The count ticked again. View count, 2. That night, Jeremy dreamed of the tower again. But it wasn't broken anymore. It was standing tall, gleaming. No. And beneath it, rows and rows of people sitting in folding chairs, all staring at enormous screens, all with their mouths stitched shut. Every screen played the same video. Him, sleeping, breathing, waking. Each day of his life captured like security footage and played on a loop. He looked up. At the very top of the tower stood his reflection, smiling. He jolted awake. Sky was gone. He found her on the edge of the storage lot, staring out at the road, hands jammed in her coat pockets. She didn't look at him when he approached. I've been thinking, she said softly, about how it all started. Before the streams. Before Lot 22. Before even the tower. Jeremy stood beside her. You mean, the first viewer? She nodded. What if the entity didn't come from a signal? What if the signal came from the entity? What if it's not about broadcasting death? He frowned. Then what is it about? Sky turned to him. Eyes wide. Voice distant. Recording life. Jeremy sat down on the gravel, overwhelmed. He remembered the usernames on the list. His brother's name. People who'd vanished. Maybe they hadn't been destroyed. Maybe they'd just become episodes. Frozen. Stored. Endless reruns. That night, when Jeremy turned on the laptop one final time, the screen greeted him with a new prompt. Just one line. No font. No cursor. As if it had been written directly onto the screen. Ready to go live? There were no buttons. No options. Just that one question. Sky walked in, saw it, and froze. It's asking. He nodded. And for a moment, part of him wanted to say yes. Not because he was tired. Not because he was scared. But because some small, gnawing part of him believed it was already too late. That the feed had never stopped. That everything he'd done was just another episode. That this conversation, right now, was being watched by someone. somewhere, and they were waiting for the ending. So Jeremy smiled, looked straight at the screen, and whispered, "You first." Then he closed the laptop, and this time it stayed shut.
And that was tonight's tale from the Shadowed Tales archive. If it left a mark on your mind, if the silence feels heavier now, then the story did what it was meant to do. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the darkness. New stories are always on their way. Until then, keep the lights low and the doors locked.